Hello there. You're listening to the Box Office Show. I'm Ryan Hill, and once again, I'm without Dylan Johnson, but I will still be talking about the box office numbers from last weekend and the box office predictions for this upcoming weekend. Then I will be joined by a trio of friends, filmmakers, and hardcore David Lynch fans to discuss one of his most celebrated and influential works, Blue Velvet. For the first time, we're going to be having Edward Finan, Alex Flores, and Hunter Vance on the pod. And we're going to dive into the box office breakdown for April 4th to the 6th. This was Minecraft weekend. It had its opening and completely blew past all projections and expectations that were set for it. The chicken jockey craze was unbeatable, unstoppable. It made 162 million in the opening, meaning that it is the highest grossing opening for any video game adaptation. A Working Man came in second place with 7.3 million. The Chosen, Last Supper Part 2 with 6.9 million. Snow White with 5.9 million. The Woman in the Yard, 4.5 million. Obviously, huge drop-offs from what the Minecraft movie was able to rake in that weekend. Death of a Unicorn, 2.6. The Chosen, Last Supper Part 1, 1.9 million. Hell of a Summer, 1.7 million. The Friend, 1.6 million. And rounding out the top 10, still getting over 1 million with 1.3, it was Captain America Brave New World. That brought its domestic total just to the edge of 200 million. And so it'll thankfully be able to pass that. But still, overall, a rather disappointing performance from yet another MCU film. Not a devastating flop, but certainly not a massive breakout hit when compared to its budget. As for this upcoming weekend, April 11th to the 13th, an insane amount of films are coming out. Continuing with Christian-related films, King of Kings is coming out. Warfare from Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza. Amateur, starring Rami Malek, and Drop. So, four massive studio pictures coming out, and we will probably see King of Kings come out on top of these films, but of course, the Minecraft movie is without a doubt going to retain its spot at the top. All right, now it is time to go over to my conversation with Edward, Alex, and Hunter for Blue Velvet. And now I am joined by Edward, Alex, and Hunter. Thank you all so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for
Thank you for
having me.
having us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it, man.
happy to be on.
All right, so we're here to talk about Blue Velvet, but we can't talk about Blue Velvet without talking about the man behind it all, David Lynch, of course, one of the great filmmakers of all time, recently passed away earlier this year. So I just wanted to talk a bit about everyone's experience and relationship with David Lynch. Edward, I know you are an absolute super fan,
An
and
avid super fan.
yeah,
Yes.
more than one of your favorite films of all time are David Lynch films. So go ahead and talk to us about how that started. Like, when did you first see Lynch, and then how did he become this staple filmmaker for you?
Yeah. I just want to reiterate, thank you, Ryan, for having us on. But yeah, David Lynch is probably the biggest inspiration in my life in film specifically. As you know, an editor, as a I dabble in sound and other avenues in film, but it really Lynch's way of thinking kind of shaped how I view film. I saw Eraserhead probably. I mean, I can check exactly, but a few years ago. But that one was kind of like an odd dive in because it's such a like uh, it's such an oddball film. And as a fellow student, right, he was living in Philly, and that's kind of how he got into it all, and he made it over the course of what I think it was like 4 or 5 years, which is just unbelievable. Um, but then I found a little film that came out in 2001 called Mulholland Drive that I just absolutely fell in love with. I think I did it the perfect way you're supposed to. I watched it at after hours. I think I watched it at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and finished it around 4 or 5. in the morning, and I was absolutely blown away. I could not stop thinking about it. I watched it the next day. I think I watched it 3 or 4 times in that month just because I was just
Wow.
absolutely blown away by it. Um, but then obviously then I got into everything else and just fell in love with his the way he presents film as like a feeling, like more of like a sensory object where it's like, he makes art and all these other things. But he describes film as a medium to really evoke emotion and feeling. And I just always thought that was super interesting. And he talks about, he has his meditation methods and other things that I definitely have started to follow since I've come around to it. But yeah, he's just the best way to describe it. He's the oddball, but he's the most interesting person on the planet. And we definitely lost one of the great filmmakers. Obviously, he's my personal favorite. I'm a little biased, um, but I think we lost, more than that. We lost the idea of how a filmmaker should, the art life, um, true passion for the medium, and I really appreciate it. But you know,
Gotcha. All right. Beautifully said. So it was just a few years ago then that you started this journey?
yeah, very recent. Like I said, I can pull it up, but
Do you have it
because
on Letterbox? Is that where it is? Yeah.
Letterboxd is
Pull
the
it up
app
right
of
now.
all
Let's do
apps.
some
I'm gonna
live
pull it up.
research.
Oh my
I
Yeah,
God.
live
do
research.
remember when you watched it because you came into class like I don't know, a day or two after, and you're like, guys, I just watched Mulholland Drive. It is insane.
Yeah, I could like it's not like no other film. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend going in with no expectation. I know Ryan, you haven't seen it yet. I've
Yeah.
told you we need to do a screening at my house one day, but yeah, it's just like I mean, it was life changing for me. So I would love to share that with everyone else and be like, hey, this changed my life in film, and outside of film as well. Let me share in that with you, and I did it with Alex and Hunter and another one of our good
Yeah.
friends, and they all felt that same appreciation. Probably Hunter the most. He obviously coins it as a favorite of his now. So I'm always like, if a film can do that and make you think of you know outer worldly things, I think that is just something super special.
Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
crazy when we watched it at Edwards. That was my first Lynch film, and I'm not as deep as these two. These guys watched the whole filmography, if I'm not mistaken. But I've seen
Yes.
three, so I've seen
Yeah.
Mulholland Drive. That was the first one, and I was blown away. It's truly a film unlike any other film you've ever seen. I mean, I feel like you can say that for almost all of Lynch's work. Just the way he plays with surrealism is is insane, and the way he really frames that movie, like there's these tracking shots in it. I know Edward could talk about them for days, but the way he peeks over corners and stuff, it's I was at the I'm not a big horror guy, and I thought that movie was like deeply unsettling. Even though everyone says if you rewatch it, it's not as scary, but I feel like it's super gets in your head. Every Lynch film crawls in your head. They stick with you
Yeah.
for days. That's how I felt about Blue Velvet. Um, every day after it, I felt like I kept enjoying it a little more.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
have the receipts. I have the receipts. So I watched Eraserhead May 30th of 2023. So it was pretty recent.
Oh yeah.
That was my first watch of David Lynch. And then September of that same year in 2023, September 21st, I watched Mulholland Drive. And my review was just give me a year on this one because I could not figure out if this was either one of my favorites or like, climbing, but it immediately just like set me off balance. It was very interesting, but yeah.
All right. So then Hunter, that was your first Lynch exposure too?
It was, yeah, it was my first with Alex and our other friend. And immediately after, I was like, what in the world did I just watch? Because I haven't seen anything like it before. And so I decided for then however long it would take me, which about say I finished around November, to watch everything he did, including Twin Peaks. And I would go through release order. So after that, I started Eraserhead, which I have thoughts. I
It's
went
an
in with
odd
the
switch.
it is a very
Yeah.
odd switch, and I went in with the wrong mindset, and so that hindered my viewpoint. But I it's just what he does and what he makes is unlike anything you'll ever see. and it's just amazing how he's able to just create so many characters. And then, are they really characters? I don't know. That's a question you always ask yourself with watching his films. I don't know.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, everything that he does, I love.
Yeah, awesome. Have you went all through Twin Peaks as well, Edward? Like you done the
Yes, he
full?
did.
Okay.
Yes, we actually, when Hunter was going through
Yes.
Twin Peaks, we actually watched the pilot, and I was with the same group, and I was like, please just watch this show, just give it a chance. And Hunter gave it a chance. I've watched a couple of other episodes with Alex and
Yeah.
the other good friend Gunnar, and they've loved that. So, and I know Hunter's a huge fan of Twin Peaks as well, but I know we
Yes.
watched the finale of The Return together, which was just unbelievable. Um, and I think we watched the first episode and the last episode, right? That was what we did.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
bookended it.
I just wanted to I love to see the reaction just because of how blown away I was. I like to see,
Hmm.
and sharing that and be like, whoa, answer some questions. Maybe, it's the thing with
Really?
Lynch is that the thing with Lynch is that there are questions that don't need answering. I think it's more, like I said, it's like
Yeah.
that feeling. It's that dread. It's that emotion. It's that, whatever he's trying to make you feel, he makes you feel it 100,000 times, on the nose. So, but yeah, he's really interesting, and obviously all his other films go into different avenues. So it's really interesting to see. Um,
Yeah, I'm sort of midway through my David Lynch journey. I don't know how it's worked out this way, but I've seen everything pre-90s that he's done, but nothing after that point. So Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, like all this stuff, I have
Hmm.
not been able to get around to. But even his like shorts, like the short films that he had,
yes.
which I'm sure in some classes
Yeah.
they showed them, but it was
Yeah.
Ula in her class
Hmm.
that we watched them. And again, everything
The
you guys said,
grandmother.
the
The
grandmother for
grandmother.
sure.
Yes.
Vince,
Yes, that is a short film that he made.
Indeed.
so those are just like perfect distillations of everything you guys have been saying about how he's able to just really strike a mood and create these like sort of unsettling, at times disturbing, but always very creative and engaging just imagery for his films. So like that stuff was really where it came into focus for me, like David Lynch, because I'd always known about Twin Peaks, for instance. Even Mulholland Drive is like one of those films that you always know of. And you're like,
Mhm.
okay, I got to get around to that because that's in the canon.
Yes,
But
for sure.
once I went through
It's the
those
yeah.
short films, and I'm like, okay, so this is like now I understand what we mean when we say like a Lynchian work, and it definitely made me want to explore more. And yeah, definitely this year after his passing, like I want to go through and complete my David Lynch journey. I don't know about Twin Peaks. We'll have to see about that, just timing wise, since that'll be a little bit more of a commitment. But at least all of his
Yeah.
films, I want to go through the rest of those. But one that was on the list was Blue Velvet, and there was an opportunity to watch that in our great Barry Sandler's class at UCF, and so I was in attendance for that. Edward was not in attendance for that,
Oh,
Unfortunately, I was not able to.
which I was
Me
shocked
and
by. I was
Alex
like,
both
"What the
were
heck?" We
supposed
were
to be.
talking about that,
No,
and
I
we were like,
know.
and "Yeah, Alex, you're in that class too." And you
I
were,
missed that class too. Yeah,
Uh,
I'd seen it. We saw it fairly recently, so it's still pretty fresh.
mm,
You
yeah.
know, Lynch films
Hmm.
stick with you for a while, right?
mm.
Yes.
Forever.
Forever, pretty much. You'll remember the
Forever.
first time you see a Lynch movie.
But yeah, so that was my first time watching it, and so I'm very curious to hear everyone's opinions and the takeaways from it, especially from the more Lynch superfan contingent we have here in Edward and Hunter, and then Alex, since you and I are more uh, Lynch
Post,
babies, we're just
yeah.
going through it, so we'll have, I think, a
We'll
differing
get there.
perspective. We will
Yes.
complete it,
Yeah.
but for now, I think it makes for a good little dynamic. But I do have to provide an asterisk because it was not the greatest viewing experience. Edward heard a little bit about this,
Oh
but
no, what
Alex,
happened?
What
you
happened?
know the guy,
Oh
and
yeah,
he's never
we
going to
we've
listen to
talked
this
about them.
podcast, so he'll never know.
Of
Oh, there
course
was a
not.
gentleman in class that was doing something, or
He watches. He's on his phone, and he very loud music, but he watches a particular medium that is very interesting to watch in class.
yeah,
The
I don't know who that is, but I've seen him in class.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
So that part I didn't see when I was there watching Blue Velvet, the the X-rated material that apparently he was viewing in some other occasions. That was not the case there, but he was on his phone and he definitely was he was playing like videos, like it wasn't even music. Like I could see because his phone was up. I'm talking way up and I'm 2 rows behind him and his phone was up and he was scrolling through YouTube trying to find something to listen to. Like he was just going through what the algorithm had given him, his feed, and he was like trying to find something. And I was like, "What are you doing? You're a college student paying, I guess." I forget that too. I'm like, actually, his parents are probably paying for this, but
hmm
someone is
Yeah.
paying for you to be here for 3 hours to get this education. The least you could do, and it's a class where you just watch movies. Like,
Yeah.
it's the
hmm
easiest thing in the world.
How
Even
hard
if
could
you're a
it
film
be?
lover, if you're
Exactly.
a film
Yeah.
lover, like just sit there for 2 hours and just
Come
watch.
on.
Like, take a
And they're
nap
good
too if you
movies.
don't snore. But that's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're good movies. Hopefully, you'd want to be it. But even if not, like if you still show up, you can
Pop
just skip.
culture.
But if you still show up, like have the decency to just pay attention or be all the way in the back. This man was
Yeah.
not in the back
Right.
and he
Right.
was doing that. So that was annoying to me. And I hate it's a pet peeve of mine for sure. I'm sure with everyone here that, people being on their phones or talking. And I will
Hmm.
like tell them to stop. Like I've done it before. I'm like, enough. But
Let's
he
not.
Yeah.
was he was 2 rows in front, and I mean, you guys know how that is, and there's people on either side, so it's hard to like get
Yeah.
out and go over to him.
It was
Um,
just hard enough, like
it was
where
just
you
hard
wouldn't have
enough.
pulled the trigger, right?
But I
Yeah.
told Edward, I was like, I was seeing visions, like in Dune, where there's like the amber sort of like lens
Yep.
flare when he's seeing the spice and everything. I
Yep.
was like having
Yep.
visions of me, like if I got up to try and tap his shoulder, like I was gonna forcefully like hit his shoulder. And I was like, I
Hmm.
don't want to do that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because he was just grinding my gears so much. It was like 40 minutes, the first 40 minutes. And to your point, Edward, about like apparently he was watching, porn in other classes. There's nudity in Blue Velvet. I thought for sure. I was
Yeah.
like, now he's gonna lock
Turn it
in. Once
off.
he put
Yeah.
it
Turn it
on
off. It's on
screen,
the screen,
I
bro.
was like, he is going to lock in. He didn't. He didn't. But there's a part later in the film where he like shut the phone off and started watching for like 10 or 15 minutes until he brought it back up. And I was like, I don't get this guy. Like I was trying to psychoanalyze him in
Yeah.
here of like what is going on. He got up
I
and
think he
left
just,
twice and came
yeah.
back. And I was like, where is he going? Why, just stay away. Just don't come back.
Yeah.
So
Lock the door.
So not ideal for you
yeah,
in
not an
conclusion.
ideal
Not
That would
ideal.
suck.
situation.
Yeah.
As much as I could, I was like sitting in a way, taxi driver when he's like hitting that like thing. I was doing that, but to like obstruct him in my line of sight so that I couldn't see him and I would just see the film. And that worked for enough time. But yeah, it was just not the most ideal situation for sure. So yeah, I can't say that my opinions of Blue Velvet are like the most sound because there's definitely times where I wasn't 100% engaged, which I always like to be when
Yeah.
watching a film,
Yeah.
especially in that like theatrical environment. But
Mhm.
with that out of the way, I want to hear about your guys' experience watching it. And when the first time was, Edward, I'm sure you've seen it countless times. Do you
I
have
think
that
I've
on
seen
your
it.
letterbox too? What's your
Yes,
how many
I pulled it
rewatches?
up just because I was like, let me just have this pulled up. But I think I've seen it. It says I've seen it 4 times, but I think I've seen it around 5 or 6 times. I I'm on the app chronically, but sometimes I miss it. Sometimes I'll watch it when I'm just, maybe not eating dinner because Blue Velvet is a bit of an odd movie to watch. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's Lynch, so it's my vice. I love watching his movies, just doing nothing. Maybe even when I'm vacuuming or something like that, I'll have it in the background and I'll see the images. But the first time I watched it was in 2023 as well. It was in July, and so I watched Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, and Mulholland Drive. So it was a bit of it was a bit of an odd slope, but Blue Velvet, the first time I watched it, I will definitely say that I was definitely not in the same boat as you, but I was a bit distracted. It was one of those probably days where I watched a couple movies and maybe didn't get the full realization. But then I watched it a second time with Hunter, Alex, and our other good friend, and it all just clicked for me. So I think it was definitely like you said, you had a little bit of a hindrance in your viewing experience. Maybe go back to it, maybe next year, this year, the end of this year, just to get the full scope of it because um truly, I mean, it is like a American wonder of a film. It is, um, between the song, the song has a very important play in the film because spoiler. This is spoilers too, right? Okay, just
It will be, yeah. We'll do general impressions first
let
from
me,
everyone,
yeah.
and then we'll
Okay.
dive into the spoilers.
Okay, yeah. So, but I mean, at its base, it's um, very American idolized. Like the American dream and such like that. He talks about that in a lot of his films. But Blue Velvet's probably the most, you know, cutthroat, strong. Like there is American suburbia, and this is what lies below the surface, and is kind of looked over. You have a great character in Dennis Hopper who plays Frank Booth, and Frank Booth is just an unbelievably uh, crazy character. I mean, for all those that have seen it, it is just he is an he is just a crazy character that only Lynch could make, right? And Kyle MacLachlan, obviously, probably one of the best out of Lynch. Him and Laura Dern. Laura Dern is also just unbelievable. This was one of her first roles, and it's just crazy to see like her, trajectory. But Blue Velvet is what started it all, and I think for a lot of people, it's a it might not be your favorite Lynch film because if you've seen all of them, it's hard to say like Mulholland Drive or Twin Peaks or any of those other films, or even like a Lost Highway or something like that. But I still believe it's I think it's number 3 or 4 for me out of all of his films. But it is just um, it's an experience, and it's one that like it's probably his most easily digestible, I would say, just because his ideas are very simplified. Um, there's films like The Straight Story, like a Disney David Lynch movie, right? But we're not counting that right now because that's just how did that even happen? Um, but yeah, I just really like the message of it, and the actors obviously are fantastic, and I just like I kind of like the surrealism, like Alex was saying, but it's very toned down in this. There's hints of it here and there, um, but it's definitely more of a easily digestible Lynch film, which I think is a good start. I think this film is definitely one of the few first ones you should probably get into, and then you can get into the more experimental and crazier films. But for people that have never seen Lynch, this might be a good entry point.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah.
So yeah, compared to other Lynch films, definitely more straightforward and toned down on that, the surrealist aspects and the more avant-garde aspects, but still will be a bit of a surprise to people that aren't used to more unconventional films. So
Definitely.
yeah,
That's why I say it's kind of a good entry because it's like
yeah,
it's not
Yeah, it's still pretty
too
out there.
extreme. Yeah, it's still pretty out there, right? It's definitely a weird film, like if you're not used to it, but it
But it's got a happy ending compared to other Lynch
yeah,
films.
yeah, and it's yeah,
It's like some
it's
positivity. I mean, it
uplifting
gets
a
pretty
bit,
dark.
I guess. Yeah, it gets relatively dark, but it's definitely surprisingly one of his like more complete happy films in
Hmm.
the end, at least.
Hmm.
You come away from it being like, oh, okay, is the world getting better? I don't know. And then and then he releases every film after that is like, never mind, no, and nothing is good. Okay, right. So, but yeah, his voice is very clear in this for sure.
gotcha. How
Yeah,
about you guys, Alex? What was your first experience?
it
Was it that
was
time
it
you guys
was
watched it right before?
yeah. So it was after Mulholland Drive. So it was my second Lynch, and when I was watching it, because I was just comparing to Mulholland Drive, so I was like, was expecting it to kind of have this big twist or something. But then once I just sat with the story and I was like getting into it, I was really pulled in on this, the commentary of the suburbs and, suburban America and the Stark side, which is, from my understanding, a pretty Lynch thing, from just Mulholland Drive to Blue Velvet, showing the underbelly of, things that are surface level positive. It was just really engrossing. The whole story, I was really locked into it. And then I left. I didn't know how to feel at the end. I was like, "Whoa, what's like?" I didn't get it. I was like, I don't like. I understand the big piece, but I didn't fully get it. And I kept sitting with it. I remember I walked down and went, "Yeah, it's good, but I don't know if it's better than Mulholland Drive." And then now I'll tell Edward like, "Oh, it's like tied for Mulholland Drive." That's how good I thought it was because I just something about that story really connects with me, and I think the protagonists are really strong. Um, Like, Kyle's performance in it is really strong. Um, yeah, it's a solid piece all around. I haven't seen the rest of Lynch, so I can't really compare it to anything. But compared to other movies that I've seen, it's a top tier film. Lynch direction, always the best.
Nice. How about you, Hunter?
I'd say for me, I it was a very interesting watch for me because when I was watching, I was really digging it. And then when it really got to more of the unnerving stuff and that weirder aspect, I started to tap out. I was like, what are we doing? I don't need to see this. And there's a sequence in here where I'm like, this goes on for too long. I don't like this. Can we stop? And then it clicked with me later on in the film, like, that's the point. And it highlighted aspects that were supposed to make me feel uncomfortable and like this is real. And so I switched from I didn't really care for this to at the end, like my eyes are open. I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. Like this is something that I didn't really think about as much, and it's here and it's happening, and I'm being shown it. So that's just kind of the journey that you go on from any Lynch film is just what to oh my god to huh. But no different with Blue Velvet, even though like Edward says, it's a very good one to start with for people. So
Gotcha. All right, let's fully dive into spoilers. So,
yeah,
Hunter, go
I
ahead
mean,
and
but
I
if
would,
you haven't seen it, like, come
yeah,
on, guys.
yeah,
if
Please,
anyone that hasn't
please,
seen it,
please.
definitely go see
It's
it
a
and
must
then
watch. It's a must
yes.
watch.
listen to the rest of it here. But Hunter, I want to know what those parts were that
Yes, the specific
were
sequence
making
that
you
I
check
think
out.
everyone will probably know is that has seen it. It's when he gets intimate with her for the first time in her apartment. That's when and then Dennis Hopper's character comes in and he hits the mask and you're kind of there trapped with Kyle MacLachlan's character in the closet just watching this unfold. I want to leave. I don't want to be here. Kyle can't leave. So why do I get that? No, you don't. And you have to watch this all unfold and see this tortured woman getting sexually abused and raped and uncomfortable, hated every minute of it, but it is crucial to what the film is trying to say. So that was a specific part where I'm like, why are we doing this? I don't like it.
Definitely.
But that's the point.
That
Definitely.
was a tough
I
part.
actually have a
Mhm.
question for you, Ryan. You skipped over yourself. What did you think of the movie?
That is true.
It. I thought that the surrealist elements, like the part that were more Lynch-like, I really latched onto. I found myself enjoying those. And then the more like straightforward detective story stuff that was, I guess, the main part of it. But again, when you think of Lynch, you think of like those elements, the surrealist, the avant-garde stuff, and then the more just straightforward, like we're all saying this is the more accessible Lynch film. For that reason, I guess I was just expecting more of the crazy Lynch elements into it. So I was more let down or just not as engaged in what was the otherwise more just like straightforward plot. And so, yeah, again, this is all colored by the experience I had, which was not ideal. So that didn't help things.
That's
Um,
fair.
Yeah.
but the the main takeaway that I had was it was just very straightforward for that detective stuff. I wasn't as engaged in it. I was really enjoying like the whole Laura Dern, Cal MacLachlan stuff. Like I thought that was quite strong. I enjoyed all the scenes that they had together. But and this may be a controversial thing. We'll see how y'all feel about it. But I
Ooh.
was just not on board at all with Frank Booth. I was
No,
not on
no.
board, not even a little
I think
bit.
you need to go back. I think you
I
need to
might
go
need
back
to. I
because
might need to. But this is
Dennis
one that I'm
Hopper.
like, I don't know that we can blame it on that guy 2 rows in front of me. I'm like, I just don't
Yeah.
know.
No, well,
Yeah,
that might just be an opinion for sure, but
yeah.
I definitely think he is a lot more of a complex character than he is on the surface of like maybe like a first watch or even a
Hmm.
hindered watch, just because um, he represents a lot more than obviously than the surface. I mean, we're going below the surface in Blue Velvet. That's what we do in the opening sequence, right? I mean,
Yes.
everyone all of us have
Iconic.
Mhm.
tore that scene apart just because it's, super iconic, right? Like, it's, represents the kind of the trajectory of where Lynch goes from there until he had passed away. Going below the surface and not being afraid of that. Um, and I think that, the whole, what's it like, the whole tug pull like of Frank Booth trying to kind of seduce, kind of, obviously he has this, fixation with this with Rossellini, but he also like unknowingly he's pulling McLaughlin's character. I think it's Jeff Belmont, right?
Yeah, Jeffrey
Um,
Beaumont.
yeah, he's pulling him into his world as well, and obviously he's supposed to be kind of like this pure person. Um, it's just really interesting to see the progression of that. And I think that, like you said, the investigative parts sometimes can get very soap opera-y because that's kind of how Lynch is. And not unfortunately, I think it's actually really funny. I think it plays in the
Hmm.
comedy. Um,
But
but
also,
because
and
I
I don't
think,
want to interrupt you here.
no, no, no.
Laura
So,
Dern is still in high school in that movie.
sure,
So
for
that does
sure.
also, it's a little soap opera in that aspect. So
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And like I said, I think if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it might be her first role. If it's not her first role, it's like her first
Early on in
of
his
probably like
career, for sure.
probably like one of
Yeah,
her first like major roles.
yeah, and obviously it's a first of many collaborations with Lynch. And she, I've seen many interviews uh, with Dern and McLaughlin and all these other people that worked with Lynch, and obviously she says that Blue Velvet was the film that made me like expand like what I know about film, and she says like, luckily it was one of my first, so it's like it's an interesting feat to have like this is like a landmark, and I think it's definitely like you said a must watch in that regard. But back to Frank Booth. Frank Booth is an essential Lynch character. I think maybe it's one that I never understood. I also did not understand for probably a year and a half, and then I watched it again, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I understand. Not that I understand him, right? Because like that's a bit of an odd thing to say, but I understand, like, I understand the character and what he represents, and I think it's really interesting to see it put to a medium,
Yeah.
like film, because it's just like so out there. But I understand the criticism with it because it's just it like I said, it is so out there.
Yeah. It's
Um,
bonkers.
yeah,
But that is also
Yeah,
on that second watch, I did have that same kind of not realization, but more of an understanding of his character as well. So
yeah. Piggybacking on what Edward said, I agree. Like, I don't think I have that level of like personal meaning for the character because I've only seen it one time. But what I really enjoyed was how this underbelly pulls in Kyle's character and how he even gets corrupted by it. And then seeing like there's that one dream sequence with I think it's really like the only one jump scare in the film. But where he's like
talking about the
realizing the
fire.
realization. I think so. Is it with his like
yeah.
dad? Like his dad is in it, I think.
I know what you're
I know
talking
what you
about.
mean.
I
Yeah,
think
I think I
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it also where he gets corrupt. I mean, he hits Rossellini's
yeah,
character, even
yeah,
though
yeah.
she's like,
Mhm.
yeah, and he's like
Yeah.
crying in his room and all that. So
Exactly. So that I really like that part because that I think that works maybe because of his character because that's kind of the duality. Like what like I feel like I mean Edward, correct me, or I don't know if you take like feel the same way, but where he represents sort of like he's like our personified version of this underbelly,
Definitely, definitely.
that's
mhm.
creating all this chaos. I really
Correct.
like that. That's what I like about it. And then at the end we kind of go out of it and it's like he's okay. But
Right, because
but
she's
I
released
dug it.
and gets her kid back, and obviously,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think in that, obviously, like that whole like mystery, it's one of the, like I said, like complete, like Lynch usually leaves open ends, right? But he kind of
Hmm.
closes this loop. And maybe Ryan, let me put you onto a film called Inland Empire if you want to go
Oh
crazy. I'm
boy.
just kidding. Please don't. No, please don't.
Oh boy.
That one is one of the last ones you should do.
Yes.
But if you want to dive into the weirder, it's definitely, um, yeah, like I said, this is one of the more tame ones. So, and that's obviously saying something because this is not tame for a film. If anyone else's filmography, it's like, wow, yeah, no, this is not. Um, but I
For
think
Lynch.
maybe the open loop is something else too that like kind of maybe not hurts the film, but kind of gives it like a sense of like, oh, that's it. And, maybe rewatching, I think can give it more meaning. Um, but yeah, I always repeat the line. It's the at the end of the song, and she still sees, and I can still see Blue Velvet in her tears, which is like a personified version of like she sees that we can see that blue velvet that she has, which is her past, in her tears when she cries. I think it's a poetic and beautiful meaning that you can come out from that life. You can, sexual abuse, and maybe it's not with relationships, but it's with people you hang around with, and she just got into the wrong crowd and such like that. But I think it's a way of like, you can get out of this. This is American, but I think it also can be around the world, which is pretty insane, pretty amazing.
Okay, wonderful. So, as far as the other highlights of the film, we talked a little bit about the opening part, of course, where we see the picturesque suburbia, and then we see that man suffering the stroke, and then we go into that incredible shot of like the zooming in on the grass, basically, and then seeing all the bugs and ants and whatnot under there. So, uh, perfect opening. I mean, perfect way to capture what we've all been saying here about, again, like getting into that underbelly. So, what are some other highlights or standout visual pieces from the film, or like you just said there, Edward, like that the connection that the song and some of the lyrics have for what the story is conveying? Any other elements like that that you guys really clung to?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean the one scene obviously when she's singing, and Jeff is there, and Frank is also there, is pretty interesting because obviously Frank is crying, which
Hmm.
is crazy. Obviously he's an insane person, but he's holding a little part of the blue velvet, and it's like, obviously a symbolic reason of like he is kind of holding her captive in his world, and she just wants to get out, and she just, she has aspirations, and obviously he's holding her kid for what we think is maybe ransom or something like that. But I think that scene is so interesting, and obviously like cinematically as a movie, it's just an absolutely stunning sequence with the red backdrop, and that comes to Lynch's normal, red curtains. He loves those red
Yes.
curtains. He loves how they look. Says it all the time. Said it. That's so sad.
Oh,
Um, but I think, yeah, that's probably one of the things with them, and obviously the ones that they mentioned with uh, the sexual assault scene when he's in the closet. I think that's like just personified. It's just unbelievable how he can put the audience in someone else's shoes for most of the film, if not all of the film. It kind of, Lynch is about all the immersion, right? Like he immersifies. Wow, that is not a word. He
It is now.
immerses. It is now, and there we go, a dictionary. But he immerses you in the film, and I think that's really important. So those scenes definitely uh, immersified me.
I like the part when they're in the car. It's not I don't know the thematic level of that scene. I just think it's a really fun, tense
Well,
scene.
You're a neat girl, or what?
yeah, which
When they're
car
when
scene?
the first time he gets in the car and he's like, "Oh, we're going for a drive, we're running
Oh
around,"
yeah,
and
Heineken.
he's like there in the middle of the car, and
Yeah,
I I
for
just think
sure.
it's a fun
We're
part of
just
the movie.
trapped in that ride
Yeah,
that
Yeah.
you're
he's
just
giving
there, and
us,
it's
right?
uncomfortable, and these guys are
Hmm.
crazy, and you're like, "What is going on?" I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's a fun
You
scene.
have the girl dancing on the car.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
like the
Yes.
tension. It's really good. That's
Hmm.
after the when they find him right in the room, I think. Um,
Yeah, that's after,
Hmm.
obviously that's
That's
when
towards the
he's like,
end.
let me take you for a ride. Yeah, no,
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe not towards the
no,
end,
that's
but
in the
like
middle of the movie, I
It
think.
middle. I think I would call it
Yeah,
the middle. Yeah.
the end of the second act.
Yeah, that's Yeah, probably a fair
Not just the
assessment.
midpoint, maybe, but we're getting into technicality here with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would have to pull up the movie at this point,
Yeah.
Pull up the
right?
runtime.
Technically, 138, 11 seconds,
Yeah,
13
exactly.
frames. Like,
Here,
yeah.
I'm coming. I'm going.
But that's just the
Oh
part
boy.
that sticks with me, that part. And oh, I also really like the ending. I feel like I keep bringing it up, but the ending really stuck with me. That was the part I kept thinking about days after. Yeah, it's a really good movie.
Yeah, for sure.
hmm
How about you,
And
Hunter?
something he also highlights in the film that we haven't talked about yet, outside of just underbelly of some people, it's with government corruption as well, with the cops. There's a corrupt cop in the film. And even it's plain as day from people that we think could help us and are supposed to keep us safe are still making us unsafe and keeping with however they are with
The norm,
like
the
Frank
loop.
Booth. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Enabling the status quo. Actually, didn't notice that. That's why you got to
Fair
watch
point.
Lynch movies over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a constant thing where you I mean, I guess most filmmakers, Alex's favorite filmmaker is Spielberg. Hunter, would you say it's Lynch
Yeah.
or would you say it's okay?
No, Spielberg.
Oh, Spielberg. Okay.
Yeah,
So
but
we
Lynch
got
is
two
like
Spielheads. Yeah.
like right there.
He's right there, right? Ryan,
Yeah.
yours, I'm
I'm a
trying to think. Oh,
Spielhead too,
Chisel,
for sure.
but you're Chisel, right?
Chazelle's up there. I'm huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just gotta have a longer filmography, but
Yeah.
For
He's
sure.
only got 4.
yeah,
Yes.
5
But
if you want to
Spielberg and
include Guy
Scorsese.
Mallon.
It's always fun. I'd like to go back and see like who has the most like 5-star films. Because I think right now, I think
Mhm.
Spielberg, Scorsese, and Kurosawa are tied. And I'd put again,
Yeah.
Mount Rushmore. I think is Spielberg, Scorsese, Kurosawa, and Hitchcock. And then
Oh,
if
yeah.
I had watched
Hmm.
Barry Lyndon with you guys, maybe I'd put Kubrick up there. But you gotta watch the one I'm gonna say.
No.
No.
That's
That's the next podcast we're doing.
Barry Lyndon. It's a very but that's for another time.
Yeah.
Kubrick is for another time. He is also an interesting
I would love
character.
to do a Kubrick deep dive.
Yes, for sure. Because Lynch is it's kind of in that same vein of like just oddity and like discovering things that maybe on the surface is just not there. Right? He brings it up
Clockwork
to the
Orange.
surface. So yes, I mean like that is. I mean obviously that was a part of our class as well, but
Yeah.
it's just I mean it was very good class, right? Like all of the films that we've seen, we saw JFK a couple, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And it was another one where it's just like wow, yeah,
Behemoth
that's
of a
insane.
film.
Yeah, that is a monster for sure. But Lynch definitely has a few monsters in The Return, 18 hours, and me and Hunter definitely called it one long 18-hour movie.
It is.
It's
100%.
I mean, right. So like, really interesting how he can translate all that. But I want to go on record that it's saying I did not like Blue Velvet the first time I saw it. I thought it was an interesting quip. I was like, this is obviously I had just seen Eraserhead, so it was an odd like film to go to. Or I thought it was good to start, and I was like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then obviously there was the other films that just blew my mind, and then I came back, and now I'm like, oh, okay, Eraserhead's pretty good, and Blue Velvet is a masterpiece,
Yes.
you might say. So, but yes,
There you go.
Next one. Hoping to make that the next Lynch I watch.
What,
Going
Eraserhead?
Eraserhead, yeah.
Go with the right mindset. Don't make the same mistake I did.
I'm ready. I think I'm ready to sit through that.
You'll never be ready.
Hmm.
You'll say you'll never be ready.
It's really. I mean, and Ryan can can be a testament. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing can
You can't
prepare you for it. The only thing I can go in like with saying it is just like listen to the sound design and listen to how it changed sound and horror specifically. A lot of people say that like The Shining was like a big horror change, but then we hear Kubrick say that Eraserhead was his favorite movie and kind of inspired The Shining sound design. So it's like, okay, well, there was sound design before Eraserhead and after in horror specifically. But Yeah, that's an interesting film for sure. Definitely a lot of deeper meanings, and he obviously says time and time again that he said that it was his most spiritual film, which is just a testament to how old, like oddball he is. It's like that's your most spirit. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
whatever. It's an oddball, but yeah.
But all right, to go back to Blue Velvet here, were there any other parts to it that even now, after four something plus rewatch for you, Edward? I'm sure a couple for you, Hunter. I don't know, Alex,
Yeah.
you've only seen it that one
Just
time.
the one, just the
But
one.
any lingering questions or things that you're still like, I can't crack this? Like, what was this for? What was that man thinking? What does this mean?
Yeah, Blue Velvet's Lynch definitely has a puzzle that you can never solve. So every time you watch his films, maybe another puzzle piece comes in, maybe it doesn't. I think I understand the scope of it all with, the American suburbia and everything, but I think it's I think with questions, I think they're always going to be there. I think I have a few just about, why like this whole like sexual assault thing and all that stuff, like obviously that's like the biggest thing that everyone gets turned off by. It's like, why did you do that? Why did you do like, for the uncomfortableness? And I think it's important for us to feel uncomfortable sometimes. Um, Especially in film, like, I've seen crazier films like Irreversible or whatever that movie's called by Gaspar Noé and like all these other filmmakers that
Yeah.
are just super oddball, like even like make Lynch look like, a can of candy, right? So, um, he's Blue Velvet is the questions I think are there's a lot less questions in this one. I think there's more questions in the other ones, but the questions that I have are even just it's not that I don't care to answer them. It's just that I think it will come naturally in watching. So maybe no questions to be answered. I don't know if Alex and Hunter have any questions that they hadn't answered, but um, that's kind of how I feel. Is kind of like if there is a question, I'll find it out maybe by watching it another
Hmm.
5 or 6 times, but who knows? I think that's super awesome that that he can do that.
Yeah. Nothing lingering question wise for me, which is kind of surprising for a Lynch film.
For
But
sure.
yeah, the rewatch definitely helped a bit because I did have lingering questions there, and then the rewatched answered some. And then I know if when I'm going to watch it a third time, I'll be like, oh, I'll think of a question there, and then after I'm done watching, I'll be like, oh, I got my answer now after thinking on it. So, but nothing that will really take up your mind for a while.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. I feel like with Lynch, the biggest takeaways come from that, and not even that initial watch, but when you watch the film and how you feel after, that's where it's at. I know we were talking about like understanding the film, and I think with Lynch, like his films don't really have one true definition. It's really when you watched it, how did you feel? Like, what did that film make you feel? And I feel like Blue Velvet's a great example of that because it is more straightforward. So there aren't these questions. I could go on about like 10 things in Mulholland Drive where I'm like, wait, but like, what was that again? And Edward will explain it to me. But with Blue Velvet,
Sure.
it's really just this feeling of, oh yeah, the underground of suburbia and overcoming this terrible thing that happens to you, and just kind of that you can overcome, like what Edward said. And I think just whatever feelings you take, like even what Hunter said, the police, different things you notice when you go back to watch it. So it's not really lingering questions, but when you go and watch it, and you kind of feel anything that you might have missed from the first viewings.
For sure.
Gotcha. That's a great point for sure. The one that I'm curious about once I go to the rewatch is that I think it's after they start doing that, like right about where he takes him in the car, and then they go to this bar, and then there's the one dude that is singing, but he's not actually singing. It's
Oh,
like just the track is
mm-hmm,
playing, but he's like lip syncing to it. And then Frank Booth is like enamored by it a little bit. That
mm-hmm.
one was compelling. And then they have where they don't even walk out. It's just they just disappear and they were left.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
they got beamed away. Beam me up, Scotty. They disappeared. Um,
Yep.
so I thought that was a compelling, just like twist. Because again, we've seen Frank Booth being just so crazy, insane, off the
Hmm.
wall to the max. And even that whole scene up until that point, I was not really jiving with. Like I could get the what they were going for there, with showing like him and his crew and they're running the town and they're having all
Hi
this
again.
like freedom and everything. Yeah, you can. Um, and then so yeah, I don't know. I just thought that part to me especially was I was like, this is so over the top. It's like Goodfellas, or like a Scorsese crime film, but by way
Mhm.
of like the 60s Adam West Batman camp attached to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just don't know that I'm enjoying it. But once it got to that part, I was like, okay, like this is a very interesting choice that they made here, and we're seeing him in a different sort of light where he's almost being like, I don't know, quelled or hypnotized by that singing. And we're like,
Mhm.
okay, maybe he does, he's got more dimensionality here since he can find something beautiful, or at least uh he can be intrigued by something that isn't just booze and violence and all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be curious to watch that again with less distractions and
For sure.
see what else I can take away from it.
For sure.
Yeah,
It
all right.
definitely made me look at like going into liquor stores or going somewhere, and if I see a Pabst Blue Ribbon, I will never not recognize that.
Yeah.
Like that is a forever thing that will play in my head every time. Is just Frank Booth saying that he doesn't like Heineken and that he prefers
That
Pabst Blue
shit.
Ribbon. Yeah, it's a great scene. Because then it just like hard cuts into transition, like into the scene. It's just like, what was that?
Yeah.
uh, but um, yeah, I definitely have had uncles and family members that are like that, where it's like they need their beer, right? They need their specific
Yeah.
beer. They don't drink any of this Mick Ultra. They don't drink any of this watered down stuff.
Yeah.
They
Damn
they
light
have
beer.
their Budweiser or whatever. So it's an interesting thing to harp on, but um, yeah.
All right. How many red curtains out of five? You go to each of you here and get your rating.
I love it. Yeah.
So Hunter, how many red curtains out of five?
And I'm gonna go with 5 red curtains.
A full
We
five.
got to do a
Terrible Lynch
Lynch
impression.
voice.
Yeah, I was just doing it for the fun of it, but yeah, sure. Yeah, I want to hear your guys's.
Edward, you doing
Alex?
it? Oh,
Me?
Alex, you're
I'll
up
do it.
next,
I'll do it.
Alex. We'll
I'll
go
do
with
it.
you.
I'll do
Alex,
it.
you're up
I'll do
next.
it. Okay.
Channel it. Channel it.
Wait, let me. 5 curtains out of 5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Five
five
red
out of
curtains
5.
out of five, Alex. It's 5 red curtains.
Hmm.
5 red curtains
Got
out
that
of 5.
inflection.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
If
Come on,
it's a
guys.
it's a it's solid.
add the shake that he does whenever he did those videos.
Yes, yes. In slow motion
Yeah.
screaming of Dennis Hopper. Yeah, for sure.
So you gave it
Uh,
a full five, Alex?
Yeah, I have no problems with that movie. At least on the first. When I walked out of it, I gave it a 4.5. I was like, I don't know about this one, but then I don't know what happened, but it sat with me. It crawled into my skin. I kept thinking of all these different moments and the way it made me feel, and I was like, yeah, I can. Full 5. It's tied for me with Mulholland Drive out of the 3 I've seen for number 1. So, and I even say that I could see myself going back to watch just because I'm really scared of Mulholland Drive. But I could go back and rewatch Blue Velvet
Being
sometimes,
scared of a
maybe
movie
more
is
likely.
unbelievable.
Dude, it's scary. It's scary. The homeless, spoilers, but the homeless guy behind the
Yeah, yeah.
Sunnies
We
or not
won't don't
what
go
Uh,
into it too much, but
yeah,
yeah.
no, don't go. It's just.
yeah.
But I hope Ryan doesn't know what you're talking about. But it is.
I don't. I don't at all.
Don't worry,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
important.
It's. Well,
It's
I don't think if he hasn't seen it now, then he won't ever hear
Yeah.
about it. So it'll come as a surprise as much as
yeah,
all of us have.
Yeah. And then Edward,
just some
a
creepy imagery in the
surprise.
film, basically. Yeah, yeah, which is known for Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that I'm
Yeah,
anticipating. So
you had that coming. Yeah.
we
Oh yeah.
we'll get through it though. Because I'm not the biggest fan of like super scary movies either, but
It's
I think I
not
can
that
handle
scary.
it.
It's
I'm
with
yeah.
all due respect, Alex is a little scared easier than others. So
Yeah. And
Okay, but
mine
that's
is a
me.
little
That's
bit.
what I'm saying. I
I,
don't even
yeah,
watch horror films, so
Neither
I
do
can
yeah.
I.
avoid it. Yeah.
It's not that bad. It's just deep. It's not.
unnerving.
Yeah, I don't want to say anymore because you got to watch it. But It's not that bad.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
And then Edward, that was a full 5 from you.
Of course. Yeah. No, it's
Incredible.
I was gonna spare you the 5 out of 5 out of 5 out of 5, but I figured we could let it all go out, but it's your turn.
Yeah, let's hear that Lynch
mine.
impression.
I want to I don't know.
to
It
rewatch?
has an asterisk there, so I need
Yeah.
to do that rewatch to really get it.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Then it'll be
I get it.
That is fair.
such a big difference between 3 full 5s out of 5s, and then so I'll
Just,
withhold.
it's all right.
I would hold mine.
After everything we've said, and it's
half a star, maybe a little.
Yeah,
one
half a
star,
star
no.
for Kyle MacLachlan.
Minecraft movie better.
Chicken jockey,
Oh God.
indeed.
Wow, David Lynch passed before he could.
I know,
Could
for
hear
your experience.
chicken.
No.
That
I
is
know.
real. I hope he got to see it early. God damn it.
Yeah.
Well, that's
You can
why
really
he was
feel
able to
the
pass
Lynches,
away.
though.
He saw a
Yes.
Minecraft
Yeah.
movie early, and he said, "My work here's done.
No, that's
they
it.
don't need me
Yeah.
anymore."
Yeah.
They're
I'll
in
never
good
be able
hands.
to create something that good.
No, yeah, that's real.
Wow, look at that chicken jockey.
There's nothing better.
All
No,
right,
that movie is very bad.
thank you all again for coming on to talk Blue Velvet and David Lynch, and I'll have to have you on soon for more David Lynch discussions and go through the rest of his filmography. Not one by
Yep.
one. We'll do a little
As you
next
do.
time.
We'll do it as you do it, because obviously me and Hunter have seen
Yeah.
it all. Alex, we'll have to see some more,
I will
but
get
we'll
through
get
it.
to it. Yes, we'll
Yeah.
get
Get
through
to
it.
it. Eraserhead next.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks again. It was great having you on.
Of course, thanks for having us.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.
That's all the time we have. If you would like to give your thoughts on the show, you can email us at theboxofficeshowpod@gmail.com. Our main title theme for the show is Sundown by Joseph McDade. And if you like the show, please give us 5 stars on whatever podcast app you're listening to, and be sure to tune in next week. Have a great rest of your day.